Recording has started, you can say.
A very good afternoon to one and all present here. Welcome to our third session on the topic Decentralized Arbitration, Challenges and Opportunities. For today's session, we have our speaker, Mr. Sandeep Bhalotia, Headed Legal Affairs at UAE. I welcome you to the session, sir.
Thank you, Adin.
So we can start with the session now. Over
Sure.
to you, sir.
Thank you, Adin, and welcome everyone for today's session. I will be covering a topic on decentralized arbitration and what are the challenges and opportunities that are there in this specific domain that we are currently facing. Before I move to the exact topic, I will basically highlight on what is blockchain, what is smart contract, and what actually is decentralized arbitration. I see that a lot of students will be joining this session, and there will be few practitioners who probably have not ventured into this specific subdomain of technology and law. And therefore, I thought of briefly venturing into the basic concepts, and then we will move on the core topic, which is covering of the basic challenges that we face in this specific domain and what are the opportunities when it comes to decentralized arbitration. I'm not sure what exactly the format of presentation is, but I'm happy to take questions after the end of my presentation. So if you have any questions, please note them down, and then I can answer your questions once I'm done with my presentation. Right? I will not go in depth with the concept of blockchain and smart contract because it's there can be a separate class or a book for itself. So I'll just briefly touch upon the definition and then try to build upon that today's session that I'm going to take. There are a couple of disclaimers that I want to put outside before I begin my presentation. The first is I come from a legal background. I'm not a coder, I'm not a software developer, so please excuse me for not providing specific technical details that are there in that specific domain, which requires some sort of understanding of the coding and programming and software development and a lot of other technological inputs that are necessary to understand the domain. I will be covering only those issues that I have faced, I have come across, and I have been researching on, and I have been dealing with specifically from the law and the policy side. My interest in decentralized arbitration is specifically oriented from my current work that I'm doing with this one decentralized justice system, which is a startup based out of France known as Kleros. I've been working them for a couple of months, and that's where most of my research related to the decentralized arbitration is focused upon. So let's start today's session. Basically, let's begin with what exactly is blockchain. And I'll try to give a very simplistic definition of what exactly is blockchain. Blockchain, as the name suggests, is a chain of different blocks. These blocks are basically software codes that are there in a specific coding. Each block contains certain kind of information that is coded in a specific software. Now, most of you already know about cryptocurrency, just like Bitcoin. So when we speak about, say, a blockchain, which is oriented towards cryptocurrency, in that kind of blockchain, a block will contain the details of specific transaction that is taking place. But in a lot of countries, the government has started taking initiatives to incorporate blockchain in a lot of different projects. Like in here, UAE, a lot of property related contracts, real estate related contracts are in blockchain format. So in that case, each block will contain the details of specific property, which might include the entire size of the property, the transaction cost, the date on which the transaction took place, and a lot of different details. The block will also contain details like hash. Hash is basically a specific unique identity of each block. Just like human beings, we have our own unique fingerprints, we have our unique DNA, we have our unique retina that we use for various biometric and a lot of different kinds of identity related requirements. In the same way, each block has its own unique identity. So the block will contain the data, its own unique identity, and the unique identity of the previous block. So this is how each block is linked with each other. So that's basically, in a layman's language, is a blockchain. There are a lot of different features related to the blockchain, but since this is not a detailed presentation that I'm giving on blockchain, I will skip through this part and directly jump on the next concept, which is a smart contracts. Now, what exactly smart contract is? Again, it's a software code. I'm not sure what is smart into it, but as of now, the current technology that is there in existence is just a code in which the execution is dependent upon a certain action. So when you use, say, suppose calculator and you put 2 plus 2, you get a result of 4, because that is how the programming has been done in that specific calculator. Or if you use the calculator on your phone or laptop, you know that when you enter 1 plus 1, it's equal to 4, because the software is designed in such a way that if these inputs are provided, it will give a result which is equal to y, whatever the result is. So smart contract works on a concept which is known as ITTT, which basically means if this, then that. So it takes the inputs from the users and provides an ultimate result to it. All of this is done in a software code. All of this is done in a programming language, and therefore it is a smart contract because it can execute itself, and therefore we call it smart contract. Then I will work towards explaining what exactly is decentralized arbitration. Now, we all know what the court system is, but we know that to a certain extent the government has control over the court. The Chief Justice of probably India has control over the Supreme Court and what the High Courts does. When I say control, it means how the cases will be referred to, what kind of administrative decisions needs to be taken, which bench will be sitting on a specific case. So there are a lot of flexibilities that someone is controlling in our current justice system. Same goes for the arbitration. In arbitration, if it's an institutional arbitration, then a specific institute will have some sort of control over the arbitration when it comes to the administrative and the procedural issues. Yes, there is an arbitration rule, but those arbitration rules are again have some sort of flexibility where an arbitration institute can pitch in and decide certain issues. That depends upon how the tribunal secretary of that specific arbitration institute's work, how the case management in this specific arbitration institute works. So therefore, the current justice system is centralized. There is a central authority that kind of has a say on the arbitration or the current judicial system. But the decentralized arbitration is a justice system where there is no central authority. No one decides who should be the judge. Neither the parties, neither the arbitration institute, neither the startup that is working in that specific domain. They don't decide what kind of rules that are applicable. So a lot of things are decentralized in terms that the community that is using it decides what exactly needs to be done whenever there is a dispute, who needs to act as an arbitrator on those kind of disputes. One of the great example of decentralized dispute resolution startup or a platform that you should go back and look at is Kleros, Kleros. It's a France-based institute, which is one of the leaders in decentralized arbitration, decentralized justice system, and they have come up with a lot of use case scenarios where decentralized arbitration can be used for various reasons. And I will discuss about why decentralized arbitration needs to be used for different scenarios when I discuss about the opportunities. And what they have done is, if you use their platform for decentralized arbitration, what they will do is they will take the dispute from the person who wants to file a claim, and then their system, their code will randomly select the arbitrators. So depending upon how many arbitrators that parties have agreed on, if they have pool of 100 arbitrators, if the parties have agreed on 3 arbitrators will be randomly selected from that pool. It will not be decided by the Kleros, it will not be decided by the parties. It's a software code that will randomly select 3 people. And these 3 people will make a decision on the dispute. Everything is integrated through the technological platform. They will only have the information that is required for them to decide specific dispute. They will not have extra information about the parties. And once the dispute is decided, the winning party gets some sort of incentives. And when I speak about decentralized arbitration, especially like Kleros, you need to understand that they use a lot of cryptocurrencies as an incentive, and the currency or the token that is there in these kind of decentralized arbitration is different kinds of cryptocurrencies that are there existing in the market, or their own specific kind of cryptocurrency. They usually don't use the fiat currency that we have in the different jurisdictions. And they will, based upon the decision that is made, if you want to appeal, you can appeal, but each time you appeal, there will be double the number of the arbitrators that were there in the previous one. So suppose I lost the dispute and I want to appeal. When I appeal under the Clero system, the next time, instead of 3 arbitrators, there will be 6 arbitrators, and I will be required to pay the fees of 6 arbitrators. That means appealing is not that attractive. And the reason why they have done this, or any kind of decentralized dispute resolution wants to do, is to ensure that at certain point, it becomes really costly for the parties to not continue appealing each and every decision, right? And that's the reason why they have put double the number of arbitrators when you go beyond a certain requirement. Decentralized arbitration now, if I have to sum it up, is basically an arbitration, a dispute resolution mechanism where there is no central controlling authority to decide who should be the arbitrator, how that arbitrator should be selected. It's all dependent upon the coding of the specific platform that's there. And based upon that coding, randomly people are selected to decide on a specific dispute. And based upon that decision, the award is rendered over, and the award is given to the specific party which is winning the case. And based upon that, they get certain incentives, or they get the refund in terms of the expenditures that they have incurred. Now, you might ask that the initial concept of decentralized arbitration is a bit more complicated, and why do we need decentralized arbitration when we have court system, when we have arbitration, which is quite an efficient system, and then within the arbitration you have emergency arbitration or fast track arbitration, which can help you to resolve your dispute. So why do you need such a technical concept of decentralized arbitration, which most of the lawyers can't understand, and it takes a lot of time for even a lawyer coming from a non-technical coding background to understand these requirements? For that, I will give you an example. Say, suppose I'm running a shop here in UAE and I sell t-shirts. Each t-shirt costs around 1,000 rupees. You ordered it from India. Say, suppose the t-shirt is defective. Now, what do? You will either file a case against me in India to recover the dues if I'm not giving it, if I'm not refunding you, or you have to file a case here in UAE if it's a court jurisdiction. In both the scenarios, it's not very attractive for you. The reason why it's not attractive is because you will probably end up incurring more cost before seeing, probably 10 times more cost compared to your original price of the t-shirt before even seeing the final award. Whether it's in your favor or not, that's a different question, but you have to incur at least 10x expenses, because the cost of the t-shirt, or the cost in the dispute, the disputed amount is such low that the existing court system is not very attractive for you. So what do? So instead of having a court system, both the parties decided that we'll have an arbitration. So it decided with an arbitration. But you all know in arbitration, if it's an institutional arbitration, the institute will have its own administrative fees. Each arbitrator will charge their arbitration fees. And if it's technical and you don't have some sort of legal understanding, then you probably need to hire. I don't think that is justified, because you are going to recover only 1,000 rupees at the end of your dispute, unless and until the arbitration cost is given in your favor. Again, it's not very attractive option for you. Now take another example where, say, suppose you bought some music online, an MP3 file or some sort of subscription file, where the cost is only 20 rupees per month. And if there is a dispute, does the existing dispute resolution mechanism is of any help? Because the amount that is there in the dispute is such low that the existing dispute resolution platforms or the mechanisms become unattractive for you to utilize. And that's where the decentralized arbitration comes into the picture. Another thing that you have to keep in mind is that in the current technological scenario that we are living in, we can hire services from any part of the world. Say, suppose you are sitting in India, you want to develop a website for your customer who's based in UAE. You can hire a software developer from, say, Sweden. So these are three different jurisdictions that are currently playing in one small transaction. And the website development probably won't cost you, say, more than 200 USD or say 2,000 rupees or 3,000 rupees. And for that, you are involving three different jurisdictions to enter into a contract, which makes it more complicated and which makes the current dispute resolution mechanism a bit less attractive, especially when the amount in dispute is such low. Now, what this decentralized arbitration model does is it cuts down the cost because everything is automated. You don't need to worry about the technicalities of it because your contract will be a smart contract, which basically means that if you don't get the specific services, it will automatically refund you the amount. If you get the services, the opposing party will automatically get the specific amount that's there. But if there is a dispute, then there is always a decentralized dispute resolution platform which resolves the dispute at a very low cost because it's completely based on the technology and is kind of automated to a great extent. It's very efficient. It's very impartial because the jurors are selected randomly. It's not biased. It's very fair because there is no biasness involved into it because the specific institute which is providing decentralized arbitration doesn't have any control over it. You don't have a control over it. It's randomly selected jurors who apply the existing principles and try to give an award based on what is right and what is wrong. And therefore, the decentralized arbitration is a bit more attractive towards resolving low-cost disputes, especially of an international nature. Now, think it from the perspective of e-commerce disputes. eBay has a dispute resolution platform. Alibaba has a dispute resolution platform. They have their own dispute resolution platform because for them, it doesn't make sense to go to the court or go to the traditional arbitration to resolve the disputes. Because when you go on e-commerce platform, you will find a cap which is as cheap as 50 rupees. And if it's that cheap, I don't think even a lawyer will draft a single page notice of less than 50 rupees. It will probably cost you a couple of thousand rupees, right? And therefore, it doesn't make sense to go on these kind of platforms. And that's where the decentralized platform becomes more attractive. Of all the transactions that are taking place internationally, especially in the e-commerce platform, where you're buying services from an e-commerce platform, 2 to 5% of the disputes are usually related to small purchases that we make, which cost around 100 rupees to 200 rupees or 3,000 rupees. And therefore, these are the disputes which are usually ignored. Because if you're buying something and it's costing you 50 rupees and the other side is not refunding the amount, you would probably ignore and forget about recovering that amount because you think that there's a lot of hassle involved in just recovering the 50. Let's just forget, not order next time from the same vendor, not order from the same website. But these are the challenges that a decentralized arbitration is trying to resolve by cutting down the cost, cutting down the time, cutting down the lack of transparency that's there, and bringing down the burden on the existing dispute resolution system that we have in place. Right. So this is the basic overview that I wanted to give before actually getting into the main topic that we have to discuss today, which is the opportunities and the challenges that are there in decentralized arbitration. And there's a lot of scope for students and the young practitioners as well to do a lot of research in decentralized arbitration because it's a growing domain and there are a lot of institutes which are willing to get associated with the law students and practitioners to bring out more quality content and do the research to make sure that their platforms can be utilized in real life scenario. So it's not something that I'm talking about completely alien thing. It is happening. A lot of financial sectors are using decentralized arbitration. The construction sector is using decentralized arbitration. Insurance sector is using decentralized arbitration. A lot of freelancing contracts, especially in the tech domain, are using decentralized dispute resolution mechanisms. They're using smart contracts. They're using blockchain-based systems. So this field is growing, but obviously it has a lot of challenges. So now you basically know about what exactly is blockchain, smart contracts, and what is decentralized arbitration. And you also know where the opportunity lies because it's usually the places where the disputed amount is really low and the outcome that is required is really swift. Because if tomorrow there is a construction dispute of say a couple of million, you can wait for a year for the entire arbitration proceeding or the court proceeding to end. But if your dispute is for say 1,000 rupees for a t-shirt that you purchased, you don't want to wait for a year. You want a quick resolution, right? And that's where these kind of platforms are necessary to increase the effect, speed, and decrease the cost at a significant level, not by a little bit of margin, to a significant level. And that makes these dispute resolution systems a bit more attractive. Now we'll discuss about the challenges that are there in decentralized arbitration one by one. And if you're interested, you can take down the notes and probably start your own research, because there's a lot of scope for researching on these platforms. As I said, that I don't come from the technological background, I come more from the legal background, and therefore I will be focusing mostly on the legal challenges that we face. But since I've been working in this domain, specifically on decentralized arbitration for past couple of months, I know a lot can be done, and there are a lot of opportunities out there. There are a lot of questions that can be asked, and there's a lot of work that can be put into to get the clarity on different challenges that we are facing in this specific domain. So let me start with the specific challenges that we are facing. The first challenge that is there in decentralized arbitration is the lack of technological education. So when you hear about ODR or mediation, arbitration, negotiation in general, you will see a lot of people are not aware of these dispute resolution platforms, especially people coming from village or non-urban areas. And those are the places where the mediation can be used, but they're not aware because there's no proper education. Then you think of an ODR, online dispute resolution, less people are aware. And then you think of a decentralized arbitration, very few people are aware about it. So that's the biggest challenge. That's the challenge, because we need the support from the government to push for the education. We need more seminars, we need more classes in the law school, we need more trainings for the professional to promote a decentralized arbitration in terms of the practice and in terms of research as well. In India, cryptocurrency is something that's looked down to a great extent, and most of these blockchain-based platforms incentivize people based on the use of the cryptocurrency. So if we don't have proper regulations related to the cryptocurrency, and if the government is not very friendly with the cryptocurrency, then the development of these kind of platforms will be really difficult in a jurisdiction like India. So we need to educate people, we need to educate other stakeholders about the concept of these decentralized arbitration and how the technology is playing an important factor when it comes to the law and policy. Our law schools traditionally have always been very shy about including technological courses in their legal teaching. But now is the time when they have to include, because when the law students graduate, they do face a lot of challenges. They do face these kind of requirements. They do face these kind of companies which are working on these kind of transactions, and their law firm or their company wants them to provide certain kind of inputs. So for the lawyers who have not studied these kind of concepts, it's kind of going back to the law school from scratch and trying to understand the concept to help them to do the job that they are doing. So education is a big barrier. Education is the major challenge that we are facing right now in terms of decentralized arbitration, in terms of blockchain and smart contracts. The second is the negativity that surrounds cryptocurrency. The reason why I'm speaking about cryptocurrency in decentralized arbitration is because if I'm going to participate as a juror in, or as a judge in, or as an arbitrator in that specific decentralized platform, I need to have some sort of incentive. Why would I invest my time on a platform to decide disputes if I don't get something in return? And usually these blockchain smart contract based dispute resolution mechanism have an incentive, which is a cryptocurrency. So when I decide the dispute, and if I'm eligible to receive some sort of incentive, it will usually be a cryptocurrency. And in India, if you look at the RBI notifications or the draft bill that's there, that's pending in the parliament, the draft bill or the SEBI regulations and the notifications that have been released in past couple of years, you will realize that it's kind of being looked down, and it's not a very cryptocurrency friendly environment that has been created in India, in a lot of other jurisdictions as well. So that again needs to change for these kind of platforms to grow and make a progress in the near future. The another limitation is what kind of disputes can be referred to decentralized arbitration, because in decentralized arbitration, smart contract is the base. Now, smart contracts is a program code. It cannot do the intervention that a human being can do when it comes to the interpretation of the specific clause. Just take an example of, say, indemnity clause, which is usually drafted with a lot of technical words like party X needs to indemnify party Y for all the loss that they have incurred, direct or indirect, loss of the revenue, loss of business, loss of customer, and whatnot. Now, if you put that into a smart contract, it will be really difficult for a software code to figure out what are the direct and indirect losses that they have incurred. It's usually a lawyer who does the research and try to make an argument in front of the arbitrator to convince them. So these are the kind of clauses that you can't actually code at the moment. Therefore, you have a very limited scope, very limited kind of disputes that can be transformed into smart contracts and then can be utilized for resolving the dispute through decentralized arbitration. So there is a lot of human intervention currently which is required in a lot of kinds of dispute, and therefore not every kind of dispute is suitable for the smart contracts. Then next challenge, and which most of the lawyers and law students will be happy to hear if they are not understanding the concept of blockchain and decentralized arbitration, is because which law does apply on decentralized arbitration, and to what extent decentralized arbitration is legal or acceptable, and the final award that you receive in decentralized arbitration, to what extent it is enforceable. Because for a decentralized arbitration to take place, there has to be a smart contract. Now, for a smart contract to be legally recognized, you need to look at the contract law of the specific jurisdiction where the specific jurisdiction of which the contract law applies. Now, in a lot of jurisdictions, you will see there is a form requirement, which basically means the contract needs to have certain things in place to be considered as a valid contract. Same goes in India, same goes in UK, same goes in UAE. In almost all jurisdictions, you will have that certain ingredients needs to be fulfilled before an agreement can be considered as a valid contract, right? Does smart contract stand the test of the existing laws that are applicable in different jurisdictions? Something, again, that needs to be figured out. I haven't come across any Indian Supreme Court judgment where they have analyzed whether the existing contract law is sufficient enough to cover the concept of smart contract, whether smart contract can be considered as a proper contract under the Indian laws. Then the second problem that we face is we have something known as UNCITRAL model law for arbitration. But for decentralized arbitration, we don't have any sort of guidance. We have New York Convention for the enforcement of international commercial awards. But for smart contracts, can the award rendered under the smart contract, under the decentralized arbitration, be enforced using New York Convention? That is again something that is yet to be tested and yet to be researched and looked in depth, because these are the applicable laws. What law will apply? If you apply, well, the existing laws are suitable for these kind of platforms. To what extent these laws are suitable, and if they are not suitable, what revision and what modification needs to be done for a decentralized arbitration to be effective, for smart contracts to be widely accepted in different jurisdictions, is again something that needs to be looked into. Another challenge that smart contracts and decentralized arbitration would face in general is when you have a smart contract is based on blockchain technology, which means that whatever is codified, you can't change it. But we have seen in our personal experience that once a contract is entered, a lot of times parties want to terminate the contract. They want to rescind the contract because of the change in the requirement or because of change in the laws or the regulations of the specific country, which makes the enforcement of those kind of contracts void or illegal. But if you have entered into a smart contract, you can't terminate it. It will be getting executed. You can't make any kind of changes or amendments into a smart contract. So it's a very rigid. Once you enter into, you have to forget it. If there is any error, it has to be there and it will enforce as it is. So that is something that we still need to figure out how to overcome these kind of challenges. Because if today you entered into a smart contract and tomorrow your requirements changed, then you need to enter into a new contract. You can't make changes in the existing contract because it's based on the blockchain, and blockchain is immutable. That means you can't modify the blockchain at that moment. You can, but it requires a lot of computing power, a lot of money and a lot of energy that is required to make changes into the blockchain, and that's a discussion for some other day. But it's kind of impossible to make those kind of changes, and therefore you need to enter into another parallel contract. So you will have two contracts for the same transaction, which doesn't make sense. So that again a kind of drawback of this specific technology. Then, just like when we draft the contracts, we end up making mistakes. There are typographical mistakes. There are a lot of other kinds of mistakes that might be corrected by entering into an amendment. The same goes for developing any kind of software. When you develop any kind of software, you will hear from the software developers that there is an error or there is a bug in the specific. That means there are certain mistakes in that software. Now, if you are devising a contract in a program code and tomorrow there is an error and you can't change that contract ever, that means a wrong contract is going to get enforced. And say suppose the problem is such that you can't make any kind of changes, but the entire contract cannot be amended. That means that all the exercise that you have done to enter into the contract and negotiate and everything is kind of waste. So that's again a challenge, because the software programmer can make an error and those errors cannot be amended because of the presence of the blockchain technology on which the smart contract is based. So that's again a challenge which needs to be looked into. And another problem that we see, and a lot of discussions that we see around it, is a decentralized arbitration a fair system of dispute resolution? Can it be considered fair? Because to be considered as fair, there are a couple of things that needs to be in place. First is any new kind of any kind of dispute resolution mechanism needs to be fully aligned with the existing laws. So does decentralized arbitration is fully aligned with the existing laws of collecting the evidences, protecting the confidentiality, and fair justice, proper time to be given to all the parties for the hearing on all those kind of requirements? Is the decentralized fulfilling those requirements? The second is, what is the incentive mechanism in place? How these people are going to be incentivized? Is there a hope, or is there any scope of corruption? Is there any scope of bribery in decentralized arbitration? What happens if the platform is hacked? And if the platform is hacked, what happens to the dispute that was adjudicated? Can it be referred to the court, or will it still go back to the decentralized arbitration? So there are a lot of questions that surround around the concept of decentralized arbitration. And these are the challenges that people face who are researching or working on these domains when it comes to the decentralized arbitration. Now, I see there are a lot of questions that are coming up in the chat, and I was kind of expecting those questions. I'll try to address those questions one by one, but if I miss out on something, please feel free to write me an email or message, and I will try to speak to you to clarify your doubts. So, okay, I think, should I start with the questions?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, please. So do you want us to read the questions to you, or like?
It's good if you can read the question so that everyone else knows what exactly the question is and I can answer accordingly.
Arshvi, are you there? Arshvi?
Okay, I will start reading the questions and answer one by one. So Padmini asked me.
Please continue, sir.
Yeah, so Padmini asked, what is the concept of decentralized arbitration? So as I said, I'm sorry that I can't cover blockchain, smart contract, and decentralized concept in depth because of the time constraint, because the focus of today's presentation was more about challenges and opportunities in this domain. I'm happy to have side discussions about it, but the decentralized arbitration is basically a dispute resolution mechanism where no third party has a control over a lot of aspects, which traditionally is controlled in normal arbitration and court. Let's take an example of selection of arbitrators or judges. When your dispute is referred to a court in, say, High Court or Supreme Court, probably the Chief Justice usually have some sort of say to compose or decide the bench and what kind of dispute should go in front of specific kind of bench, right? So they have some sort of control over there. When it comes to arbitration, either both the parties will have control to make the appointment, or usually the arbitrator or the arbitration institute will decide who should be the arbitrator. And if both these options fail, the court will decide who should be the arbitrator. In decentralized arbitration, there is no deciding authority. If there are 100 arbitrators that are registered, randomly the arbitrators are selected. This reduces the possibility of biasness. This reduces the possibility of corruption and bribery, because you don't know exactly who is your arbitrator, because they are hidden behind the unique code and you don't know their name and you don't know who exactly they are. You don't know what nationality they belong. So this is one of the features of decentralized arbitration. The another feature of decentralized arbitration is that instead of traditional face-to-face appearance, and instead of relying on traditional contracts that we have in paper or digital files, decentralized arbitration focuses only on smart contract based disputes. Now, what is smart contract? Smart contract is basically a software code in which the requirements of the parties are coded. A very simple example is vending machine. How many of you been using vending machine for past couple of years? Many of you, right? You use vending machine. What do you do in the vending machine? You insert a coin. Once you insert a coin, the action is initiated. That means then you can insert the specific number in the vending machine to release the specific snack or drinks or whatever you are taking from that vending machine. But once you have inserted the coin and you have asked for the specific product to be delivered to you by entering the PIN, you can't ask the coin back. There's no refund mechanism because you voluntarily inserted your coin, you asked for the specific thing, the vending machine will deliver it. And it's all automatic. And it's a contract basically. When you insert your coin, when you insert your requirement, it's a contract. You usually get refund if the vending machine is not able to dispense that specific product because of whatever errors. Then you get your coin back. Otherwise, the coin is taken and it's never returned, and you directly get whatever the stuff that you required from the vending machine. It's just like any other contract. You give the money and you get certain product or services in return. So vending machine, in a typical sense, you can consider as early stage smart contract, where there is no signature, there is no physical contract, there is no electronic contract as such that you are signing, but still you are entering into a contract. That is smart contract. So decentralized arbitration kind of takes control of all the disputes that arise from smart contracts, right? If you want to read more about decentralized arbitration, I will suggest you to go on the website of Claros. And Claros has published a very detailed book on all these concepts that I have discussed. And they have a couple of chapters, 8 or 9 chapters, in one of the best books that I've read on these kind of concepts. And I think that would help you in detail, Padmini. But you still have any questions, I will drop my email to Atin and you can drop me an email and I'm happy to answer your further questions. So I'll just move to the next one. How is the administration done in decentralized arbitration? Who is it administered by? And this question is again asked by Padmini. So there is no administrator as such, but obviously there is going to be a company or there is going to be a platform that builds the initial code. Once the initial code is built, then there is no one who is continuously monitoring. There is no one authority that is continuously monitoring. There are multiple authorities, multiple users of that specific decentralized platform who monitors the changes, who monitors how that platform will react. If more than 50% of the users agree to certain thing, those kind of changes can be brought into the decentralized arbitration. But there's no one person who's making the decision. Like in an arbitration institute's rules can be changed by the owner of that arbitration institute or the managing director of that, or anyone, the governing body of the arbitration institute. But that can't happen in a decentralized arbitration. In decentralized arbitration, all the stakeholders needs to agree to it. At least more than 50% needs to agree to it to make these kind of changes. What is the scope of decentralized arbitration in India? As I spoke earlier that we are still trying to push mediation in general in India. And because of the current COVID situation, we know that how many peoples and how many judges and a lot of people in the judiciary have faced some sort of problem with normal Zoom and video calls, right? And the ODR, online dispute resolution mechanism, which is online mediation and arbitration itself, requires a lot of push at this stage to be widely accepted in India. Once that is done, then only we can think about decentralized arbitration, because it requires a lot of education. It requires a lot of awareness at the moment, which we in India usually don't have in terms of the users who are going to use these kind of platforms. Big companies will obviously have some sort of expertise, but the normal users will not understand these concepts. So there is a stage that we need to cross, and it will take a lot of time for us to reach, a couple of years for us to reach at a mass scale when it comes to the decentralized arbitration. But at the same time, you also need to focus on the fact that decentralized arbitration in itself is not developed. It's a very early stage. I listed down at least 10 challenges that I can think on top of my head. And without addressing those challenges, we can't fully adopt decentralized arbitration. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done by the community itself before it can be widely accepted by the practitioners as well as the users in India. What are the platforms for decentralized arbitration in India? At the moment, I have not come across any decentralized arbitration platform in India. It's difficult to find even online dispute resolution platforms. There are few, but they also need to work to improve their platform. So I don't think there is any decentralized dispute resolution platform, decentralized arbitration platform as of now in India. Can decentralized arbitration used in the cases of marriage? Now, when you speak about this kind of dispute resolution mechanism, you have to go back and think again from the arbitrability concept. When you say marriage, I'm not sure what specific cases are there in your mind, but can marriage be arbitrated? And what kind of scenario, what kind of disputes under the marriage can go for the arbitration? So you have to go back and look for the arbitrability concept, Booz Allen case, and all those landmark judgments, and see if specific matter that's there in your mind can go for arbitration. If it can go for arbitration, then probably it can also go for decentralized arbitration. Kavita Guha, very limited information is available on the net. Where do you get the information on decentralized arbitration currently? Which platforms are active here in India? You don't need to restrict yourself only to the platforms that are available in India. You can go out and start looking for other platforms. One platform that I have recommended you is Claros. Claros has a lot of, I would say, reading material on their platform. They have the book that they have published, which cover all of the concepts that I'm discussing at the moment. But when you do research on it, you have to research on different fragments. So you have to research separately on the smart contracts. There's a lot of content on the smart contracts. I'm happy to share a couple of links and files after this call with Atin, and he can circulate among all the audience members to start studying about it. There are a lot of internship opportunities and fellowship opportunities that come every year, which law students can get associated to and keep on developing their knowledge. There are a couple of platforms that I would recommend on top of my head. The first one is obviously Claros that I've been working with. The second is Open Law. So try to look for these two platforms. One is specifically related to smart contracts, and another one is specifically related to decentralized arbitration. And once you do that, then you can probably venture into other platforms. There are a couple of courses that are available on Coursera and other online course platforms, which you can start taking to develop your initial knowledge of blockchain and smart contracts. I hope that helps. Can party challenge the enforcement of award or request to set aside the award passed in decentralized arbitration? That is again a challenge. First, we need to figure out what kind of laws are applicable and whether it kind of satisfies the basic ingredients of the applicable arbitration law, and whether it falls under the New York Convention. My belief is that if we want to use decentralized arbitration, if we want to make it mainstream, then we need to develop some sort of model decentralized arbitration law. And we also need to develop something on the similar lines of New York Convention, which is there for the arbitration, and Singapore Convention, which is there for the mediation, for the enforcement of mediation agreements. On the same line, we also need to probably develop a convention that is helpful in terms of enforcement of decentralized arbitration awards, because most of the decentralized arbitration awards are self-enforceable because it's there in the smart contract. If you have not delivered something, it will be automatically refunded. But if you want to challenge that, if you want to challenge the specific institute which is doing decentralized arbitration, I think we need some sort of international consensus on that, and some sort of guidelines, or probably a convention or model law needs to be put in place for us to move forward. Can you ask your questions? What is the career prospectus in presently in India, authentication source and research, and more about the concept? As far as the authentic sources are concerned, I'm happy to share a lot of material with you via email, or you can find me on LinkedIn if you want to have a discussion about it. But when it comes to the career, I would suggest that there are a lot of law firms, especially boutique law firms, which work. If you directly want to jump on decentralized arbitration, I think that's not a good start. You first need to start understanding the blockchain. You need to start understanding the cryptocurrencies, their regulations, how cryptocurrencies work, what is the ledger technology, and how the ledger system works. And then only slowly and slowly you can build your career towards decentralized arbitration or smart contract or a tech lawyer. So what you need to focus basically is to be more oriented towards becoming a technology lawyer rather than decentralized law, because there's no concept of decentralized arbitration career as such. So you need to focus more on the technology law, more on the privacy law, try to understand what is blockchain and what are various laws and reports that have been released by different governments across the world about blockchain, its ethical obligations, its compliance requirements, and also look at the existing laws that are there in place for cryptocurrencies, because that's a very important aspect of blockchain in general. And if you have the understanding of these things, then you can slowly and slowly develop a career in this specific domain, in this narrow domain. There are few boutique law firms that are specifically focused on technology. So try to intern or work with those boutique law firms that focus on technology, not specifically on blockchain, but probably on these kind of technology, which might include software, which might include websites and different kind of other technological platforms. So try interning with these kind of law firms, which will give you a broader view of the career that you can develop. How many countries have incorporated approach of decentralized arbitration? There are a couple of countries which have specific code for blockchain disputes, like I guess Poland has a specific code that deals only with the blockchain related disputes. There is one in Japan, and here in UAE also, I guess the IFC has a specific segment where they deal with the blockchain related disputes. So there are a couple of countries which are, making progress towards handling the blockchain disputes, but there is nothing as countries which have incorporated decentralized arbitration. There are arbitration friendly countries, and there are cryptocurrency friendly countries, and there are tech friendly countries, and these are the countries which will be more oriented towards decentralized arbitration. And that's pretty much it. If I'm running out of time, please let me know, because I'm just going through the questions one by one. There are a lot of questions to be answered. What is the role of regulators of the blockchain play, and how they are appointed? I kind of didn't get this question. What do you mean by the regulators there? It's not very clear for me to answer. I'm sorry. Do the parties follow the procedure agreed by them? Yes, the parties follow the procedure agreed by them. When the parties are entering into the smart contract, they have an option to select what kind of dispute resolution mechanism they want to incorporate, and both the parties sign that smart contract digitally, and that's how they agree to the specific process that need to be followed. If the parties don't agree to the specific process, just like arbitration, they can agree to the process once the dispute arises, right? So once the dispute has arisen, they can agree on what kind of decentralized platform they want to use for resolution of the dispute, and both the parties agree, they can refer their dispute to that platform. So yes, they can agree, and they have to agree actually. Then
I think we're done with the questions.
I think I have pretty much covered your questions. I understand that you have a lot of questions because I think 30 and 40 minutes is usually not sufficient for anyone to explain what is blockchain, what is smart contract, and what is decentralized arbitration. So I'm happy to take your questions through the social media platforms or through the email, or you can refer your questions to Atin, and I will try to address those questions. That's it from my side, and thank you everyone for showing up. Thank you everyone for spending your time during this session.
Thank you so much, sir, for explaining the concept of blockchain and decentralized arbitration in very brief and like very understanding method, like we can.
No problem.
So
Thank you,
we
Atin.
have the session. Thank you so much,
Great.
everyone, for attending the session. Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful session.
Thank you, everyone.
Now
Thank
we
you.
can end the session.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Take care.